former President Donald Trump went after former Secretary of State Colin Powell after he died from COVID-19 complications. So now Trump released a short statement commenting on his passing, and it was not kind. So let's just get into it. He said, "Wonderful to see Colin Powell, who made big mistakes in Iraq and famously so-called weapons of mass destruction, be treated in death so beautifully by the fake news media. Hope that happens to me someday. He was a classic RINO, if even that, always being the first to attack other Republicans. He made plenty of mistakes, but anyway, may he rest in peace." All right, look, short statement. But here's the thing. So he's actually not wrong about some of this stuff. Look, as crass as it is, he makes points that are valid. And I want to get into this because, look, Colin Powell has made some more than some mistakes. Okay, so look, in Iraq, for example, he literally presented false evidence that led us into a disastrous war that cost, the deaths of 1 million Iraqis, innocent people. And yes, also, to be fair, he has been treated so incredibly well by the news media. Even progressives like Jamal Bowman couldn't help but eulogize him very, very favorably. And of course, the argument is, well, yeah, look, understand that he's a strong black man, and he's the first to operate these, to be in these positions. And that is an important milestone for black people everywhere. Okay, totally, I agree with that. But at the same time, he's also a strong black man and the first to be in these positions that also led us into a war that killed, brown people, many, many brown people. And so I'm sorry, but, yes, you can definitely say that achievement for a black American is historic, but also point to the fact that the person who occupied that position has did some rather terrible things. Okay. And so, look, no one here is above reproach. So I'm just going to get this out of the way. Donald Trump is, of course, disgusting. We know that. The only reason that he cares is because Powell spoke out against him, called him out for January 6th, which is the correct thing to do. So Trump hated Colin Powell because Colin Powell was mean to Donald Trump. Understand that that's where this criticism comes from. It's not that he actually cares. Trump actually cared about anyone who died as a result of the Iraq war. No, U.S. Trump, they're Muslims. They're Muslims. Of course Donald Trump hates them unless they buy the condos. Trump also avowed racist, classic racist. And again, Powell was the first high-profile black person in these positions of power. He was first the National Security Advisor to Ronald Reagan, then the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and then Secretary of State. But he got there by serving the military-industrial complex. He also, in his records, he downplayed racial tension in the military and also described himself as a realist in the Kissinger school. Kissinger as in Henry Kissinger, who was not a good person. If you're modeling yourself after Henry Kissinger, that's not good. That's not something to be proud of. That's not something to be proud of at all. So now let me give you some details, right, about his record. Not Kissinger's record, but Powell's record. Back in the 1960s, he was stationed in South Korea, and he had prosecuted black soldiers who participated in a race riot on base. Now, at that time, things were actually common because you had black people who served in the military but were not treated like human beings. So, and of course, the thing about that is, how do you give your life to defend a country that treats you like a second-class citizen? And many black people did, and they did so. And they gave their lives hoping that one day this country would actually treat them as equals. And we still have a long way to go in that. Now, on that, of course, Powell also strongly disagreed with Clinton's don't ask, don't tell policy for gay people in the military. Not because he was like, no, you should be able to serve out and proud. No, he's very socially conservative. And so he didn't want gay people closeted or out at that time to be able to serve in the military. Now, did that change? Eventually, I believe so. And did he, of course, later on say that, oh, yeah, that whole Iraq thing, that is a stain on my legacy. But did he actually come out and really apologize for that and say that what I did was 100% wrong, it was a war crime? No, he never really faced any sort of justice for what he did with Iraq. Now, it's even worse, by the way. Powell was also involved in helping to whitewash the horrific My Lai massacre back in Vietnam. Okay, so now that between 347 and 504 unarmed people were killed by U.S. Army soldiers, led by William Calley and his troops. Now, their victims included elderly men, women, children, and infants. Women, of course, happened to be raped, bodies mutilated. It was horrifying. So now Powell was investigating a letter by an Army specialist named Tom Glenn. So now this is not directly related to the My Lai massacre, but nonetheless, he noticed that American soldiers were having a problem with South Vietnamese civilians. They didn't like them. There was a lot of hatred, there was a lot of bigotry, there was a lot of racism towards the civilians that, of course, they say that they were there to protect from the evil Viet Cong, right? So now the oft-quoted part of Glenn's letter stated that, quote, it would indeed be terrible to find it necessary to believe that an American soldier that harbors such racial intolerance and disregard for justice and human feeling is a prototype of old American national character. Yet the frequency of such soldiers lends credulity to such beliefs. What has been outlined here, and I have not seen, and I've seen not only in my own unit, but also in others we have worked with, and I fear it is universal. If this is indeed the case, it is a problem which cannot be overlooked, but can, through a more firm implementation of the codes of MACV and the Geneva Conventions, perhaps be eradicated. So this person comes out and says, look, I've seen a lot of racism, I've seen a lot of hatred among our own troops towards the South Vietnamese. I think that's a problem. I think we need to get rid of that, especially if we're here to ostensibly protect them. Then we should respect them as human beings. So now Powell was basically there to investigate this, right? And so, and go, okay, so there's some hatred, racism. Okay, I'll look into it, right? We're going to look into this. Now, none of this touched on My Lai, right? In fact, Powell claimed that he didn't even know what the My Lai massacre was until 1970. So now, of course, even before then, there were rumors going around that, you know, something dark and terrible had happened in My Lai, and there, of course, was a military cover-up. And he said that the relationship, in his final report, Powell said that the relationship between soldiers and the citizens of Vietnam were excellent. Quote, in direct refutation of this portrayal is the fact that relations between American divisions and soldiers and the Vietnamese people are excellent. 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 So, oh, that's fascinating. All right, so now, Glenn was not in My Lai when this happened, but the fact that something this horrible could happen to civilians only kind of proved Glenn's point. That if something like this can happen, then yeah, there seems to be a racial problem towards the Vietnamese from the American soldiers. All right. Now, of course, the cover-up attempt also, Colin Powell contributed to with this report is now fairly well known. In fact, this didn't get revealed until 1969, and through the works of intrepid reporting, was actually reported. Now, of course, Henry Kissinger and the State Department, they of course had to go and try to figure out a story to spin for the American people. Oh no, this didn't actually happen. In fact, media went along with this by saying in the original reporting, oh no, they killed 128 communist VC fighters. That's what happened. Yes, it wasn't unarmed women and children and old people. No. This was very dastardly Viet Cong fighters. But no, there were no fighters. There was no resistance. There were no American deaths. I think somebody accidentally, injured themselves with with their own service weapon. And I think that's the only casualty that was reported. And in fact, there were 3 U.S. servicemen who were there who had actually tried to halt the massacre and rescue the hiding civilians. You know what happened to them? Well, up until recently, they were denounced as traitors. They were shunned by U.S. congressmen, including a Democratic representative of South Carolina, Mendel Rivers. So he also happened to be chairman of the House Armed Services Committee at the time. So, yeah. Now, 30 years later, of course, those servicemen were recognized and decorated, one posthumously by the U.S. Army for shielded non-combatants from harm in a war zone. So it took 30 years for them to admit, oh, right, My Lai massacre, kind of bad. Real bad. Not good. So understand that is the legacy of Colin Powell, how he did contribute with his report to the cover-up of the My Lai massacre. The source notwithstanding, in this case Trump, there's a lot to criticize Powell for, and rightly so. None of that means, of course, that Trump is criticizing Powell out of his love and care for the truth. But the truth is there. And by the way, to answer the question, there were court-martials involved as well. Callie, I believe, was given 25 years of house arrest for this. Yeah, for that. And again, if you read in, and there's a lot of details that I can't really share because honestly, the details are so graphic and terrifying that YouTube would kick this video out. Okay, so I can't go and describe the horror of these war crimes of William Callie. So I suggest that you, if you're really interested in learning about how bad this really was, go and look that up. William Callie in the My Lai massacre, just horrifying. But as I said, Powell helped lie us into a war in Iraq, helped cover up the massacre, and then later on in his career, after never really facing up to those things, served on highly paid corporate boards while enriching lobbyists and donors. And of course, gets lauded by corporate media and polite society, just like George W. Bush, because guess what? He basically spoke out against Donald Trump, while supporting, of course, a lot of Trump's policies. And so, as terrible as Donald Trump is, and by the way, Donald Trump, also a war criminal. I mean, if you look at the spike in the amount of civilian deaths, the Trump administration, under the Trump administration, as a result of him, of course, taking the gloves off the military, because that's one of the things he did. He actually increased not only drone strikes, but also the lethality of drone strikes against civilians, which have already have an incredibly high civilian death toll. And he said, let's do more strikes. Let's do more airstrikes too. Let's drop the Moab on Afghanistan. Remember, he did that as well. And a lot more civilians died under Trump. That said, and of course he was fighting radical Islamic terrorism. Yeah, that's what he was doing. But even after all that, even if you include COVID, he might still have a lower body count than George W. Bush and Colin Powell in the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan that were started by that administration. So, that just kind of illustrates how in the media, and by the way, again, he's right about the media, nonstop fawning pieces about Colin Powell. They would rather celebrate a polite warmonger because, look, personally, I'm sure Colin Powell was an incredibly nice guy. Oh, yes, a very nice, dignified, et cetera, et cetera. But he still did horrible human rights abuses, crimes. And so Donald Trump, correct about that. It's not to say Trump is better and not worthy of criticism in his own right against him. And that's not even to say that his criticism comes from any desire to make the media better or to be against war criminals. No. Trump's only mad because the media doesn't lionize him the way that they did Colin Powell or John McCain. And that's the thing. Understand that, Trump's pathology, what he desires most is fawning headlines. He wants media, he wants the people that he decries as fake news to say wonderful, nice things about him. That's all he really ever wants. And it's all he's ever wanted. And so that's why he's going on this tear. Again, doesn't care at all about Iraq, doesn't care at all about war crimes, has participated in its own. And yes, of course, what he did to the Kurdish people in pulling our forces out and letting them get massacred. That's a great point, as one of you audience members points out. And so, his points may be valid, but they come from an incredibly empty place. But hey, the broken clock, all right, twice a day. Like the media would ever say anything nice about Trump. What has he ever done that's good? Do you remember, I think it was Brian Williams, when Trump started launching missiles against, I think, Syria? That's when, go watch Brian Williams when he talks about the beautiful missiles. Okay? The beautiful wonder, oh, look at our beautiful weapons to be used. Trump today is the day he became president. The media can't wait to lionize a conservative. It is gross, 100%. It is gross. So understand that the media, that's what makes it corporate media. They will always side, if given a chance, with the polite right-wingers, even when they champion the worst kind of policies. That's how our media is stacked. That's why we do not have a progressive media other than, of course, online on cable news. Why? Because they're all corporate and they're all paid by defense contractors who run ads, and oil companies and pharmaceutical companies who run ads. If you enjoyed this video, please give us a like and share with your friends. You can subscribe and help out the channel by becoming a patron. It's patreon.com/Jeff Waldorf, or you can become a channel member as well by hitting the join button below.